Ronan Berder, welcome to Built to Sell Radio.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Tell me the origin story of Wiredcraft. Like, how did this thing get started?
Really by accident. I was working for a Kenyan company, and I had an interesting CEO who managed to actually run the company into the ground pretty badly. And after we liquidated the company in China, and there was a lot of drama. I won't get into the details, but I was left with pretty much nothing in the bank account because I had ended up paying off the due wages for my staff with my own salary, and I had myself not been paid in 6 months. So I had about a month and a half left in the bank of expenses, and I just started to consult for a couple companies in the US and France, and a couple of months in, I had too much work, so I ended up starting to go and recruit a few other people, and I ended up having a bunch of folks working out of my living room, and that's kind of how it started.
What were you consulting on?
Well, back in the day, it was mostly doing web apps and websites with a specific framework called Drupal. But that was ages ago. We quickly kind of moved on to other kind of things. But so we started working with a wide range of companies, NVIDIA, with a company doing RFID stuff. We worked with Axel Springer, was like a publisher. And then we quickly actually started working with more specifically nonprofits and international development organizations. So lots of work with the United Nations, the World Bank, lots of USAID agencies, and lots of work doing international development.
All around this kind of digital transformation, helping them become digital entities, leveraging.
Yeah, not so much. At first, the first few years, we spent a lot of time. So as I said, initially was more focused specifically on Drupal, and then later on we started to work on mostly data visualization and data problems really. So for example, in Sudan, we worked with an organization called IFES, and we built the platform to manage the votes for the South Sudan referendum, right? So all the tabulation of the votes themselves, and then prior to this, making sure everybody was registered and kind of cross-check with all other records they actually may have, like from census and whatnot. So that was that. And then we did similar kind of missions in, for example, Libya and Myanmar. We did the elections of Myanmar, and we built a platform for that in 2015. I did a lot of work as well with the World Bank. So if you go to data.worldbank.org, they're still running the platform we built back then, which is a lot of data visualization and overall open data type of work.
This sounds the hardest business to grow beyond yourself, because every project's different. It's deep technology. How did you grow past you? You didn't have any specialization?
Yeah, so it's way worse than that, right? It's not only very specialized work, but it's with very, very special kind of clients. It doesn't really kind of scale very well because there's only so many international development and nonprofit organizations you can work with. And we did that from China. So exactly 12 hours behind the main hub for our clients, which was either New York or Washington, DC. So it was really kind of trying to play entrepreneurship on extra hard mode. I wouldn't recommend. But for me at the time, it wasn't so much about trying to go and build a business. And I'm sure we'll get into this later on. It was really about doing things that I thought were, number one, interesting, and number two, potentially would have an impact. And so I thought that working, especially in things like the South Sudan referendum or elections, was a great way to actually go and have a positive impact. And then, later on, I figured out that, the mission statement was really great, but the reality of things was very different. And that all those organizations, while they have, they had really interesting challenges they were trying to tackle, the effective impact they had was very very little. So that's how I ended up not doing that later on.
how did it evolve from there? How did the business evolve?
Yeah, so for several years I was doing this because I thought it was interesting, and I was very much against the idea of running an agency as well, right, or a consulting firm. I didn't want to do services, and I really wanted to go and build a product. So we're doing this almost as a side project, although that was the main activity that was paying the bills, and we were also working on building all kinds of SaaS products. And for anybody who's like, was familiar with 37 signals. That was kind of like the dream, was to just somehow graduate into a SaaS model, which for anybody who's tried that, and I'm sure that a lot of people tried, is really impossible to pull off. Or at least it's not possible if you don't end up focusing on one or the other, right? At some point, you got to go and take risk, and it's just like, okay, I'm going to go all in on that thing. So we built a bunch of different products, some of which were actually pretty successful. And well, I wouldn't say successful, some of which showed potential. And at some point around end of 2014, we got an offer to join Techstars in the US for one of the products that we had built, and got as well, like, an offer for investment. And we did all the work all the way up to the due diligence. Like, we literally had one single piece of paper to sign and send back to Techstar, and everybody was ready. We had, my two co-founders were actually all set up. They had made preparations to have their family relocate to a smaller apartment. We're going to move to the US. And yeah, at the 11th hour, I decided that it was not the right course of action. And I had to convince them to decide not to do that, and to focus on the services.
Hey, it's John. Look, if you're building to sell, I want to let you know about a resource you may find helpful. It's called the Value Builder Score, and it will evaluate your company in the same way that acquirers will look at your business. It'll give you a score on the 8 factors that drive the value of your company. You'll also get an estimate of value and things you could do to improve that value over time, whether you want to sell now or in a decade from now. Knowing how the movie ends, I think, puts you in the catbird's seat, gives you all kinds of negotiating leverage. So it's available exclusively through a Value Builder advisor. So talk to your advisor. If you don't have one yet, you can go to valuebuilder.com/score. Let us know what industry you're in, and we will connect you with an advisor who specializes in companies like yours. Just go to valuebuilder.com/score. Sorry, what made you decide it wasn't the right course of action?
So it was the realization, almost like an epiphany, but realizing that we had been really just trying to stumble into success and not being deliberate at all about running a business. We had been doing all this kind of different products in parallel, and still doing kind of the services on the side. Well, not really on the side. It was like the main activity, at least for a huge part of the team. And I was just realizing that I was not being serious about really running a business. And I was all over the place. I was not focused. And the product that we actually were offered to participate in Techstars with was good, or at least had potential. But we had to do a zoom in right from the get-go. Like, we had realized at that point that the part that was interesting in the product that users actually wanted to go and use was a tiny portion of it. And so the prospect was to just move to the US and leave behind all that mess. We still had a team actually working on services, and somehow believe that in 3 months we could, rebuild the product, figure out if that actually works, and potentially, present ourselves 3 months later in front of investors and somehow be an attractive investment. And I think, that was really just for me, realizing hey, what am I doing? And so again, I went back to the co-founders and just told them, listen, I don't think we should do that. I think we've been really just very unfocused and undisciplined. We've not been trying to go and run any of what we tried to build as a business. And what I think we should do is being a lot more methodical. And right now, the thing that has always had demand, is the services part of the business. So we'll do that for 1 year. If it doesn't work, we'll shut it down, and then we'll move on to the products. And there was a part of me that really believed that the services wouldn't really grow that much, and that like a year later, I'd be able to say like, I tried everything and it didn't work out. We're going to shut the business down. Sorry, guys. And then, I moved to the US and start that a new business. But yeah, it didn't pan out like that. Like lo and behold, when you start focusing on things and only on one thing at a time, it works. It's a lot easier to succeed. And we saw the business right from the first year taking off, right? So we went from, I think, 7 or 8 people. And right from the first year, I think we were close to like 20 people. And we signed like Starbucks within a year. And, we started to go and grow from there on, and went from like, 20 to then 50, and then 50 to 70, and so on and so forth.
Okay, I just want to ask a couple questions here and drill down and make sure I'm getting the narrative correctly.
Sure.
So you start off, you're doing some projects, but you've got the product bug, which I think a lot of service companies, we've got a lot of service businesses that listen to this show. And I think a lot of our listeners have that same bug where the kind of services is paying the bills, but really I would love to get the product and the product multiple and are a little bit half pregnant on that. So I think that resonates for sure with our listeners. And you found yourself in the same bucket, 7 employees on the service side, and you've got Techstars kind of letting you into their program or inviting you into their program.
Right.
And if I'm understanding correctly, you walked away from Techstars and went back and redoubled your efforts in the service business.
Yeah, exactly. That was really just an epiphany for me, realizing like, this is a business. It's not about what you like doing. It's about what actually works. And what works are the services. The product doesn't work yet. And doing that program in the US makes no sense. We're going to end up really just kind of rolling the dice, see if it works out. But it was yet again a gamble, right? Like yet again maybe we'll stumble into success. Maybe we'll just like somehow it will work out, which is not really a good strategy.
How did you and the co-founders divvy up the equity? Were you guys just a third, or what was the structure?
Yeah, so on the product that we had built, I don't remember. I still had a majority of the. I had a majority of the ownership, but they had like a pretty substantial part of the business. And on the services, because I had been working on it before they joined me, we ended up kind of translating that into a lower in ownership for them. So by the time we sold to Publicis, I had still like an overwhelming majority of the business, but they had a double-digit percentage part of the ownership of the business, right?
And it sounds like you came to an epiphany that you had a real opportunity in the service side of the company. What was their reaction to your decision to abandon the product idea?
Yeah, not thrilled at first. They had really made a lot of plans with their wives to move out of Shanghai and to the US. And, some of them had kind of given up their apartments, and, one of them already had kids. And so it was a bit of a mess. But I think they trusted me with the business part of things, right? Both of them were very technical, and I was always the one taking business decisions. And so I think I did a good job at convincing them that it was the right move. Again, not thrilled about it, but I think they understood that it was probably for the best from a business standpoint.
And at that point, a lot of people, they go on programs like Techstars and they build products because they want to exit. They see the big multiple that the SaaS company, the product company gets, and they're chasing that dream. When you're 7 employees and you've decided to walk away from Techstars and really focus on the services side of the business, what's your end game at that point?
Still no end game. And that's the amazing thing, right? Like I wasn't even there. And I think by the time we actually go and decide to go and focus on the services, the first epiphany was really, all right, we got to go and be a lot more disciplined. It is a bit, we're trying to build a business. So let's be serious about that. And let's stop like doing 20 things at the same time, one thing at a time. And then also do things that are not necessarily the things that excite us the most, but the things that people want the most. So that was the first kind of like level. So, but when we actually go and double down on services, there was no real exit plan. There was like maybe at least the expectation that, hey, maybe we can get to a place where we can pay ourselves like decent salaries. That was it. That was the strategy, really. Later on, the possibility for an exit kind of started to be more real, at least. Like we started to go and consider it to be more of an actual real option. But yeah, not at first.
I want to come back to that. Before we go, what was your business model? So again, when you turned Techstars down, you focused on services. Were you billing by the hour or by the project or on retainer? Like what was the business model?
Yeah, we had a pretty crude approach to things at first. It was really just more of an hourly fee. We would occasionally do kind of I don't even know how you call that anymore. I've been out of the business now for only a year, and I don't even remember what I called those different type of quotes. But it was you have time and material, and then you have a fixed bid, right?
Fixed bid, right? Okay.
Yeah. So we had a little bit of a blend of fixed bid and hourly, but we charged like I wouldn't say a pretty premium fee for the work we did. So by the time we actually signed Starbucks, it was a pretty large contract for us, at least, like for the tiny team that we were.
What were you doing for Starbucks?
So in China, first thing is we obviously operated in China. We're in Shanghai, and Starbucks hired us to basically, first kind of like tackle. They had some issues with their website and mobile application, and they wanted to go and kind of take a different approach than what they had done so far. They had hired like very large agencies that had like under-delivered so far, and they wanted to go. There was a new chief product officer, and he wanted to go and do things differently. And so, we sold ourselves as a digital product team, like an extension of your own team. We really kind of come in with like that breadth of expertise from design and strategy all the way down to DevOps, and we'll help you kind of like build products that actually work, not that that just work in terms of like functionally work or are nice to go and look at, but actually go and achieve the goals for your team from a business standpoint. So for them, we started with doing work on the mobile side, but we ended up just running basically all of Starbucks digital play in China. And that's kind of really what put us on the map, because it ended up being such a great case study that was even just used by other agencies and other organizations like Forrester and whatnot. They would just use this as the kind of like best in class case study for a foreign brand in China. How do you actually go and execute well on the digital side? And really, I think we kind of help Starbucks kind of improve their business quite significantly from a digital standpoint. But that also kind of like, as I said, what put us on the map and really allowed us to then go and sign all these other brands like Walmart and Nike and Adidas and Lululemon and Burberry and others, right?
Wow, all the big North American names that most people would know, you brought, digital sense to China.
We had a pretty premium portfolio of clients, right? So we ended up just signing a lot of retailers. Some we work with like GM, we work with Hilton, we work with Marriott, and quite odd as well, because we often ended up like working with competitors. As I said, we work with both Adidas and Nike. It's usually very hard to pull off. They don't like each other that very much, but yeah. So lots of the American and some of the European brands that were trying to go and make it into China would come to us because they knew that we had not only the understanding of the local market and a really good team of people who actually really, none of us were really coming from an agency background. We were really digital product folks, but we also understood the Western component of the brand and could really help them kind of bridge that gap.
One of the service businesses tend to be great great cash flow, easy to start, not technically, very expensive to start, capital intensive. The one challenge, however, tends to be retaining the talent. Right. Because as soon as people get halfway decent at their job, they're looking for equity or they're going to leave, right? How did you retain? So your two co-founders, I get, they had equity and they had skin in the game, but how did you retain the next tranche of employees down from them? Did they get equity as well, or did you use profit sharing, or how did you retain them?
Well, I actually think it's more than just loyalty from the team, right? Like I think loyalty from clients is also very, very quite difficult. And I think also a lot of agencies struggle with margins. So I think those kind of combine tend to make for a very difficult experience for most people building agencies or consultancies. On staff retention, I think from the get-go, we hired a lot of weirdos. So a lot of people were quite gifted and really great at their job, but didn't necessarily on paper look very impressive. So for example, our head of Android used to be a firefighter, and he was just amazing at his job. But prior to joining us, he had mostly been a firefighter. And so we had a lot of people were just not really great at fitting into other organizations. And we had also, I think we had a really solid culture and offered, especially in China at the time, an experience that was quite hard to match for several reasons, right? But we definitely had a lot of both clients and competitors. Well, not even competitors. We had people from Alibaba and Tencent and obviously ThoughtWorks and McKinsey and Accenture just trying to go and poach our guys. So I think in the end, it was really just about the culture we had, and I guess both in terms of how we treated them and the way that we actually go and run the business, which was quite unusual in China. But also the type of work we took on and the relationship we established with our clients. So we were pretty good at pushing back on our clients and demanding a relationship that was more of a partnership than a kind of a vendor client relationship.
Where'd you find the weirdos?
I think the best way to find weirdos is to go and organize parties for weirdos, right? The best way to find new people is just to organize your own parties. And so we did quite a lot of work on open source. We did quite a lot of work on organizing our own meetups, technical and design meetups. Back at the beginning was we were more focused on the technical side of things. We very early on adopted Node.js and started to go and work with React, probably in 2013, which was very early on. We started to work with Node.js in 2009 or
I don't know any
2010.
Names, by the way.
Anyway, very, very cutting edge, right? Just taking on technologies. So that was attractive, right? Because not a lot of people were doing Node.js in 2010. Not a lot of people were just working with React in 2013. And then Docker and all the other technologies that people would want to go and play with, any sort of techie would want to go and play with, and didn't really have the opportunity to do that at other companies. We organized a lot of meetups, as I said, right? So JavaScript meetups. We organized the JSCon China, which was probably about at its peak 1,200 people coming to Shanghai and Shenzhen, and we organized in the different cities. We organized the UI UX conference, which was similar, over 1,000 people. So we kind of established a pretty good reputations of active community members and organizing all those events, and then it's kind of a snowball effect, right? You do have that talent that is already there, and that attracts more talent. And I think our recruiting practice as well, our recruitment approach was also pretty different than our competition, right? So
in what way?
Well, first we're very much looking at it like an engineering process, right? So for the longest time, we did our recruitment on GitHub, and when you would apply on the website, it would create a GitHub issue. and we would just treat it like a bug, right? Like trying to figure out how do we fix that thing? Like a person applied, how do we actually go on and get that person to join us? But I think being number one, very structured. Number two, advertising in odd places. So as I said, like we had the strategy around like events, but also, advertising a lot of like kind of underground type of forums and whatnot. And then number three is just like the nature of the test itself was again unusual for what you did in China. We're quite keen on having people being tested on the specific, on real tasks that they would actually go and encounter in their day-to-day job. I think the fact that we also empowered the team to go and make their own decisions and evaluate candidates was quite key. There was not like an HR in charge of trying to source people or evaluating candidates or reading resumes, right? So we did a lot of work, especially in the later stages. We did a lot of work on automating things as much as we could, so that this process was pretty well oiled and demanded like the least amount of work from the actual team.
Ronan, you talked about in the beginning, you started when you focused on services after walking away from Techstars, you had 7 people, you went to 20, ultimately 70. And you alluded to the idea that at some point, the specter of an exit kind of got up on your radar screen. Do you remember kind of the first time you started to think about that? What triggered it?
Well, starting in 2015, when we saw that this was working, I told the team very clearly that I had no interest in consulting at all. Never been interested in that. And I didn't want to run this business forever. So there was a shelf life on this business, or at least in my participation into the business. I think as we saw the business growing, and as I said, it grew to 70, but then later on, I think at its peak, we had like 160 people. And well, still kind of a small outfit, but like you start to go and have enough people that you have to go and invest into things like playbooks and onboardings and whatnot. But
160 people does not sound small to me. That sounds like a big enterprise.
Well, yeah. Maybe, but I think I think I started like fairly quickly within like 2 or 3 years. Like within 2 years of starting that, like by 2017, for the reason I just mentioned, the fact that I had no interest in business was really just like, okay, that's working, great. Now what? Like, how do I get out? Because it doesn't sound like there's a clear path for me to get off that train. And
what was it about consulting that you didn't like?
Well, I've never liked it. I think what do I not like about consulting? I think you don't fully own your decisions, and you don't really own anything in the end, right? Like you can do your best job, really, and that's happened multiple times. You can do the best job ever. You can service your clients like the best way you can, and you can lead them to success. And invariably, there's going to be like a new head off who comes in and has to go and show that he's making changes, or you making suggestions that are just like purely rational and are the obvious like thing to do because you know what you're talking about, and the client ends up not doing it for stupid reasons, or you end up just having to go and collaborate with teams that you would just deem being a net negative to the outcome. So, really not having the control and ownership of both the successes and the failures was really frustrating for me. I really felt
you kind of had this like love-hate relationship with services, because like back in the Techstars days, you hated services, right? Like it was like, let's have a product, and then you're like, well, wait a minute, we've got this great business over here. We got 7 employees. It's a service business. Let's go be a service company. You build that up to like an incredible success, and then it's like, I hate the services business. It's this weird love-hate.
Well, not really. I hated it right from the get-go, right? When I took that decision in 2015 to focus on the services, I was not, fooled into thinking that it could be a great business for me, like on a personal level. It was really just that realization that you got to go and look at it as a business. And because it is a business, it's not about what you like doing, it's about what people want. And what people want right now from you is obviously more of this type of, more of those services. So do what actually people want. And it just build a real business. And then, like you end up just hiring more people, the business start to grow. There was some parts of it that I found were interesting. None of it was really related to the clients. Like the bigger contracts, a multi-million-dollar engagement, or the opportunity to actually go and work with bigger brands never really excited me that much. Usually for me was more about like, okay, well, what's the runway that is this by us? And how much better is the talent going to be with those budgets? I think what was more interesting for me was then like the learning opportunity on how do you actually go and build a business, like all the things that you learn around, the sales, the recruitment side of things, the people management, and all those things, by the way, are not things I'm interested in at all. I just find it interesting to actually go and acquire those skills, but they don't make me happy on a day-to-day. Like I'm a lot happier right now not making any money writing open source software for free for a bunch of random people online than I am like running a multi-million-dollar business. But yeah, that was just that kind of like sobering realization that it has to be a business. It has to be things that people actually go and want. And if you don't like it, it sucks. But that's what it is. So just buckle up and focus on what actually works. So yeah.
So back to my question. So at what point did you start to get more serious about exit? Did something happen? Was there a triggering event of some sort?
Yeah. So I think we started to go and wonder at least about what was gonna happen down the line, right? Like so around like probably 2017, 2018, we had grown a little bit by then already, and kind of thinking about, okay, but what's next? Like we keep on hiring more people, we keep on getting better clients, larger contracts, great. What's the end goal? We've done the thing, we've got a nicer office, we've got a larger team. What's next? And I started to go and try to think about what could we do. And honestly, I wasn't too clear about what the options were for a business like mine. And because as I mentioned, I've never worked really in the agency world or in the consulting world. And so, like I didn't really know what type of opportunities would be waiting for us. But then around 2018, people started to go and approach us. And so we had a bunch of people ask us about, or at least like hint at the possibility of us getting acquired, or at least like, trying to go and start engaging into conversations around partnership and whatnot. And then we also got approached by some M&A advisors who were kind of interested in taking us to market. By 2019, we had actual offers on the table, at least actual people chasing us and trying to go and get us to sign an LOI. And that's when we start to actually go and engage really in the process more seriously.
Where are you at this point in terms of revenue, profitability, whatever you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, so our profitability has always been pretty decent. I think our EBIT was at least 30%, but mostly around 35 to 40%. And we were by then, I think, already in, I want to say, probably low 8 figures. Yeah, probably around that.
Got it.
Or high, high single digit millions, right? But probably like, in that 9 to 12 million, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's been a while.
Yeah. But super profitable, kind of roughly $10 million top line business.
I think decently profitable, well run, and growing well, right? Like pretty healthy growth year on year.
Yeah. And how are people valuing it from the standpoint of the LOIs you're getting? What are you seeing in terms of valuations, either a multiple of EBITDA or revenue? What's the sort of range?
Yeah, I mean, all kinds. We had it's been quite a while, but yeah, I mean, like the majority are just modeled around a multiple on EBITDA. So they're just looking at your profits and then they give you like a formula. But obviously, it's a little bit more complex than that. There's obviously kind of expected financial targets that you need to hit for the multiplier to even apply. And then depending on different buyers, like the multipliers were higher or lower. But I think especially when we did end up selling, I think we had a pretty healthy multiplier.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, I think Publicis reported 67 million euros. Was that the public number that they talked about?
I don't even know. I didn't even know that it was public. But yeah, I mean, I think there were some other considerations outside of that. Consider like taking into account NAV and a bunch of other things, and then also taking into account the fact that it would have been the full earnout.
Got it. Okay, yeah. So this is a spectacular multiple. I'm just kind of backing into the math. If you're roughly 10 million, 35%, so you're 3, 4, 5 million profit.
We were a little bit further down when we actually go and ended up like signing with.
Okay.
Publicis.
But still, it's a great multiple on EBITDA and an incredible exit. So walk me through. So you're getting inbound offers. How did the Publicis thing come about? Like, did you hire an M&A banker and they shopped it, or did you, like, what was that like?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, we already had a bunch of people who approached us in starting 2018, 2019. And then we had actually, we went through a first attempt at selling the company end of 2019, went all the way down to financial and legal DD, due diligence. And really we're waiting for the last round of paper. Like we were supposed to go and ink the deal at the end of Chinese New Year 2020. And so they would have put that sometime late February 2020. And obviously something else happened in February 2020. And so that deal ended up being postponed and delayed. And, in the end, we walked away from it because it wasn't going to happen. And so a year later in 2021, we ended up resuming that process. And at that stage, we had actually a lot more potential buyers. A lot more people actually approached us. We had like maybe, I think, 6 people who had approached us out of the blue about buying the company, or at least showing some interest in knowing more about the business. We hired the same M&A firm, and they added another maybe 6 or so targets on the list, and then we worked through kind of like refining that down to 6 total, and then 4, and then 2, and then we ended up choosing Publicis.
What was that period like? For, again, a lot of our listeners aspire to go through a sale, but have never kind of gotten to the point of actually soliciting offers, playing offer A, offer B off one another, talking to different buyers. Like, maybe describe qualitatively, like, what was that experience like for you when you've got 6 sort of potential buyers in play?
I think the initial steps were actually pretty straightforward. The advisors were really always very concerned about the amount of time that all those chemistry meetings and all that preparation work would take. But as I mentioned, like, I'm pretty anal about having like a pretty thorough playbook and writing things down. And so we actually, prior to even meeting any of the potential buyers, we had a 10-pager that had anything from like breakdown of like profitability across different segments to the values and the recruitment process and the strengths, and so we had like a lot of it covered already, including like kind of a summary of the memo that I actually go and wrote like pretty much every year for my team, which kind of summarized like where we've been, where we at, and what was the strategy for the year to come. And I think that helped kind of like make that process a lot easier on me. And a lot straightforward. We actually go and met people, because anybody who read the FAQ that we sent them was already pretty much up to speed. And the conversation was a lot more about like, specifics of how they could actually integrate the business, or like really peculiar questions they may have about like, how do you, maybe like our business development strategy or go-to-market angle. And then if they hadn't read it, it was even easier, because they would ask like the first like 3 or 4 questions, and every single time it would be, on the screen showing them answer is on page 7, and that's what we do. And so again, like after 3 or 4 questions, they would just like shift to like, okay, it sounds like you know what you're doing, so let's move on to maybe the more interesting questions. The second part of the second part of the process was really considering the different LOI. And I think that was difficult. It was a little bit stressful, but not that much. I think it was just more trying to go and figure out what was really best for me, obviously, but the team as well, right? So what is going to be the best place for me, the co-founders, and then the team at large to work at.
What were the variables you were considering?
Well, there was a part of like what's going to look the best, what's going to be the best in terms of. There's obviously the monetary aspect of it, like what are the financials on it. I was really one very important thing for me was to make sure that the partners were basically set that after they had made that sale, they were actually in a position where they didn't have to work ever again. And if they did, that was like basically like retirement was taken care of, and there was no more concern about money, basically, right? Being in a place where, sorry?
Who are the partners at this point?
I had the 3 partners. Yeah, there was Vincent, Quentin, and Yuha. So basically the CTO, the head of DevOps, and the COO.
And yourself. So there's kind of 4 of you that you want to make sure that if they didn't want to work ever again, they didn't have to.
Yes.
How did you figure that number out?
Well, I mean, I think the same as I figured the rates out, which is just shoot for the highest price you can, and hope it works out. Like kind of work from there back and see if the numbers actually works well.
But did you ask them like, what's your number? Like, what's the number where you won't have to work again, Vincent? Like, did you have that conversation?
I kind of figured that I figured that out for them. I don't think that the finance finance is not my forte, but it was definitely not theirs, right? So I was always more of the business guy. So I tried to go and figure out what size of a deal would actually go and make sense. But there was an emotional aspect of it as well, right? Like what figure is going to look good to them when you actually go and present the package. I was also, to be honest, like not exactly clear about what it really meant all the way down to when we received the first wire. Right? I genuinely thought that there was a possibility that all of this was a big misunderstanding, and that I was surely not going to be getting paid whatever amount I was supposed to be paid. Like this, like I may have misunderstood something. It may be just only like a fifth of that, or maybe they pay me in renminbi and not USD. I don't know, something. So again, I don't think that's my strength. Is like really not the finance part of things. Is my strategy is really just to go on and shoot for as high of a number as I can, and hope it works well, and then just kind of like work backward from that afterwards and see if it's actually an offer that I want to go and take. But yeah, so there was.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, there was that first phase. It was like pretty straightforward, I think. Lots of meetings. That second phase, it was like a little bit more stressful, and it was like kind of figuring out what LOI we were going to go and sign, because they're all kind of exclusive. And then after this, the DD was actually the most stressful part of things. It's a very lengthy process. It was at almost as long as, or probably actually longer, about the same length as the rest of the process together. And especially as we got closer to signing, was extremely stressful. I think the last 3 weeks, I was really sick to my stomach. I had like that knot in my stomach every single day. And I was just trying to go and focus on working as well in the business, but at the same time, really, really stressed and really just afraid that the thing would blow up before we actually got to the signature. So,
talk about the LOIs for a second. I'm assuming, there was a cash payment and some sort of earnout component, usually in a service company. Were they all basically? Was there anything kind of unique about the LOIs? Or were they all sort of a cash payment plus an earnout? Like what made them different?
I mean, everything we've seen was with an earnout. And then some of them were considering, or at least we're hoping they would take on equity. Stock or whatever.
So in other words, take your proceeds in stock of their company.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that?
Oh, no way. I have, as I said, I have no interest in that world. I don't want to go and hold shares from whoever that was. And then there was also, the fact that obviously because we're based in China, some of the people who approached us were Chinese companies, and so that adds another layer of complexity, right? Like, do you really want to go and sell to a Chinese organization that has like a very different way of operating than a Western company? So,
and you ultimately sold to Publicis, which is a giant agency holding company.
Yeah, I think they're actually the biggest agency holding in the world now, bigger than WPP, or at least on par with them.
Yeah. And what proportion of the deal? We talk a lot about earnouts. I just did an episode exclusively on sort of transition structures. And, on the episode, I said, like, we've seen everything from 10% of the overall consideration at risk in an earnout all the way up to 90%. Like, what was the range for you when you evaluated the LOIs? Were they trying to put a bunch of it in the earnout, or was it minority?
Yeah, but it's always a negotiation, right? Like, I think they always want to go and put as much as possible on the tail end of it. I think we did a pretty decent job at getting like not 90%, but a reasonable upfront, a reasonable amount upfront, and then some that was just like anchored on the financial targets that were set for us in the business plan.
And were they EBITDA targets or revenue targets or mixture?
I don't remember. I'm assuming it's a mixture. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And the diligence itself was extremely challenging. That's surprising given how buttoned up you were going into the transaction. You said you built this playbook and you had all the details.
Right.
Maybe
that's not what happened.
Yeah. Well, can you explain that? Why was diligence so hard?
So obviously, the first thing is, as I said, we were a Chinese company, so there was some amount of back and forth on the financials, because you have to go and basically do a lot of work to present the data to what is effectively a French company, or at least a Western company. And so there's a lot of work that goes into this to make sure that we see things the same way. And so it's not even so much that there were a lot of surprises or really, bad surprises. It was just a lot of like, well, we disagree on how this should be considered. And so there was a little bit of like back and forth on that. So that was one thing, but that wasn't the stressful part of things. The very stressful part of things was that we ended up signing right in the middle of the lockdowns in Shanghai. So let me back up a little bit. In 2020, when we actually ended up losing the first deal, it was caused by Shanghai and China as a whole going into a lockdown, and then the rest of the world doing the same, right? So in 2022, when we were just wrapping up the DD and ready to actually go and sign, the same thing happened again. In Shanghai, they started to go on lockdown really hard, the whole of Shanghai. And so we were back into the same situation of lockdown and COVID and whatnot. And so huge amount of uncertainty on what was going to happen. And so I was mostly stressed out because I was seeing the same pattern repeating itself. And I really thought that there was like, a non-0% chance that we would end up not signing.
You'd seen
not signing with Publicis again. Yeah. So that was the stressful part. That was not so much the DD.
Yeah. Well, once bitten, twice shy. And ultimately it worked out. The deal closed and the rest is history. I appreciate you sharing the story with us, Ronan. Are you up for a quick lightning round before I let you go?
Yeah. I mean, I have some more time. Don't worry.
Awesome. All right. You had 6 kind of conversations going. The M&A brought 6 more. So you had 12 potential acquirers you were starting to dance with. What was the slimiest trick that one of those acquirers tried to play on you, to prey on your naivete as not a financial guy in the process?
Well, I don't know if I don't think anybody was like really slimy because the process went pretty quickly, right? Like we went to market middle of August. And I think 2 weeks in, we already had like a lot of interest. And then by the end of September, I think we were already kind of like zeroing in on like the 2 main offers. So it went fairly quick. We eliminated the offers that were not interested in because mostly the valuation we had from some of the parties were high enough that basically everybody got weeded out. So I think some of the people who could have been pretty slimy ended up just walking away because it was too rich for their blood. They couldn't afford the acquisition. We had a few people who looked at like the summary of the, like you have a summary in the package, like the summary of the business and like profitability and growth and whatnot. And when they actually looked at that, they were like, "Is that number right?" And then right after it was like, "Hey, we can't acquire you guys. That's not possible." So I think
you had so much profit that they knew they couldn't.
Yeah, the combination of profit, size, and growth was like too rich for them. Like they could see that it was not going to work out, and then a lot of them just got weeded out because of some of the at least suggested multipliers that we were getting from some of the parties were already pretty high. So like they got
what sort of range what sort of range of multiplier?
I don't remember. I don't remember, but they were just high enough that some of them were like, "Hey, we can't match that." And so we really kind of got to that 2-3 people, 2-3 targets fairly quickly. There was still a meeting with one of the big agencies where I almost told them to, how to put it. I don't want to swear on your podcast, but I almost walked out. And I think the bankers looked at me pretty dumbfounded as well by the way that they actually were behaving, completely arrogant and incredibly hostile. And I think that was one of the person who was like supposedly kind of leading this discussion that we're having with them. Was like newly appointed and was just trying to show that he's the boss and was like, incredibly disrespectful in the conversation. So
what did he say that's about it triggered you?
It's nothing that like, I mean, he started with like, didn't sit at the table, was just like, too cool to sit. Was like leaning on the window and like in the meeting room. Kept on asking questions that had absolutely nothing to do with the conversation that we were having, and just like trying to go on, just basically kind of not criticize us, but like just being an arrogant prick, basically, for no good reason, and being like obviously hostile to in any of the interactions that we were having with us. So like really not understanding where he was getting at with any of these questions. And even just doubting the numbers that we had. And we're like, oh, okay. you don't trust us, it's fine. Like we don't really have to go and have that conversation right now. We're going to have the financials anyway, so you can look through them. So yeah, but I think yeah, it was just probably some sort of like power play that he was having internally, rather than just anything really directed at us.
And Ronan, is there part of you in that moment where you're like, who are you to even question me? I built this business from scratch. I know everything about this business. You are some employee manager who probably makes 1/10 of what I'm going to make off this deal. Who are you to even question? I'm in, like, we're in the same room together. Like, we're like, at some level, that person probably makes 1/10 of what you made off that deal. Like, they're at some point completely out of their league, even asking you that question. Like, do you feel that? Like, do you get that sentiment when you're this guy who's trying to prove himself to his colleagues, can't even sit at the table with you? Like, that to me is just the utmost of arrogance.
Yeah, no, I don't think I was upset about this because he'd be totally justified to, not regard a business as being good, or like he can have whatever opinions he wants.
But he couldn't do what you've done, Ronan. Like from 0 to 140 employees, he couldn't probably like work his way out of a paper bag. Like how? Like to me, that's incredible that you built a company with 140 employees and someone would not even sit at the table.
Well, yeah,
has done nothing. They've probably gone to a business school and they've like they've done nothing in their careers relative to what you did.
Well, I think that, well, first thing is, you're being very kind. I think there's always a huge element of luck in building a business, right? Like, for example, for us, the timing was incredible and it could have gone really, really wrong. Again, that second time, the buyer could have actually walked away and I could have ended up not selling the business. And so
I think you're being generous.
Well, I mean, I do just generally believe that obviously you have to go and make your own luck and you have to, no matter what, like it's very rare that you manage to go and be very successful at business without putting in the work. So there's obviously a lot of work that goes into this. But again, like I was never really in love with consulting. So that's not really where, my pride was. The issue I had was mostly that they set up the meeting. They had me going over there. And here you are being just being kind of it's improper and unnecessarily hostile to us, and it's a fucking waste of my time. So if you didn't want to have me sitting at that table, you're not interested, it's fine. I understand. But why having us go and trek all the way to your office and then just submit us to that kind of power play that you wanted to go and have with your colleagues? It makes no sense. It's just petty. Like for me, it was really not about his perception of our business. It was just being forced into this situation where, what are we doing here? Like, what am I a part of? I'm not interested in having those kind of conversations. I didn't tolerate that from my clients, and I would sure as hell not want to go and tolerate that from a potential buyer. It makes no sense to me. So, yeah.
Biggest mistake you made in the process of selling your company? Golfers talk about wanting a mulligan, a do-over. What would you do differently?
Oh, that's a tough one. I know, because I thought about this. We almost died a bunch of times, and a bunch. It happened a couple times. We got in a pretty bad spot. Obviously, all companies do, and we didn't die, thankfully, but we got close enough to it. And so I think I got kind of PTSD, especially on the cash in the bank, on the cash reserves. And so up until we sold the business, I was really adamant at having more than a year worth of payroll in the bank, which was a big, stupid mistake. And only realized once we got closer to selling the company that what I could have done instead is go out there and acquire a bunch of smaller outfits that would actually go and be at a much lower valuation because they're not large enough to actually go and command a large, like a big multiplier. And I could have propped up my my EBITDA, which would obviously have gone through the multiplier rather than NAV sitting in my bank account that would then go and just basically get a 1x. So I think the biggest mistake was like not to think about that like ahead of time, and I would probably have had time to go and do that. And unfortunately, I did it way too late. Like I only realized once we started to go and have these conversations, like serious conversations about the sale, that like, oh, wait a minute, if I make those moves, it could actually go and work out. But there was no time. We were already kind of like on our way to sign the LOI. We're going to start the DD, and there was no way that would actually go. We would have time to go and pull that off. So,
what was the emotional high and the emotional low of selling your company?
See, that's the thing where it's probably odd, but it's very the entire thing was stressful, especially as we got closer to signing. But there was no high or lows really in that conversation. It was just stress, really. That's it. Once we actually got the deal done and I got paid, it was really, it was surprisingly anticlimactic. And same thing when I actually ended up leaving, right? When I gave my resignation and then my last day, all that were pretty much the same. It was like, oh, okay, that's done.
Do you remember where you were when you refreshed your bank account to see the wire hit?
Yeah, I was in the living room. I think we sold on a Friday or something. And then we're not exactly expecting things to land in our bank account that fast. And I think on a Monday, I asked my wife to go and check out the bank account. And here it was. Just on the HSBC app, you had the amount. It's like, oh, damn. All right. So I didn't get that wrong. This is indeed in USD. It's not in Chinese yuan. So good to know. Yeah.
What was her reaction?
I just was done and okay. And moved on. Like I was still working, right? So there was not really a lot of time to celebrate. And I'm also not really, big about that kind of stuff. So I went on to I probably had a soda water to celebrate and that's it, right? Like I don't drink. I don't.
Ronan, tell me you bought yourself a trophy, like some sort of memento to commemorate this win.
Not really. My wife has a screenshot of the wire, and that's about it. And I think that I still buy my t-shirts at Uniqlo, and I didn't really buy myself anything new since we've actually sold the business. But it's great to go and know that the family's safe, and I don't have to go and worry about that aspect of things, right? That it's taken care of. Yeah.
Well, it's an amazing success story. I'm grateful for you sharing it. I understand you've also got a book coming out, which I don't know if you're ready to talk about yet, but people can maybe follow you on social and learn about it when it comes out.
Yeah, they can follow me on X, and I have that book coming up called Write the Fucking Manual. Pardon my French.
Are the publishers going to let you use that title?
Oh, I'm self-publishing it. It's really just a small ebook. Like it's nothing serious. But I think I tend to not try and give too many advice online about running a business. Mostly because first thing is I think like any other entrepreneur, I'm winging it. I have no idea what I'm doing. I think more importantly, anything that I may be able to go and share with you is not going to be relevant. It's not going to be relevant because we have different businesses, we have different strengths, we're maybe at like a different stage of growth, and even the few things that may actually apply to you or your business, you will most likely not act on them, right? Like I think most people will not take the advice. And then we'll have to go and get burned before they actually go and make the change. And so I tend to not do that. But I'd also think that, there are way better entrepreneurs that you could actually go and learn from. Although the vast majority of advice, or I wouldn't say the vast majority of advice out there, but at least the vast majority of books out there are well, most of them are actually, they could be like actually 40 pages instead of 400. And a lot of them are actually not really that helpful. But I do think that there's one thing that I'm pretty good at, and that is like, I wouldn't say unique, but at least not talked about very much. And it's the act of actually writing things down. And I think most entrepreneurs would benefit greatly in most situations from writing things down. I've actually tried to go and help a couple of entrepreneurs, and my advice is usually like, well, have you written this down? It's like, well, yeah, I mean, I know how it works and I have it in my head. It's like, well, did you try to write it down? And yeah, I mean, just the act of writing things down in and on its own is usually really helping people organize their thoughts better. And then second effect is really, if you do your job well, you then provide a foundation for your team to potentially build upon. And especially in services business, I think you're kind of like building on quicksand, because the majority of the know-how and the skills are just, I mean, and the value is actually in your people and how they actually go and execute. And so if you don't have like, an actual playbook, it's very hard to actually go and start building that foundation and grow from there. And then later on, obviously, it's really great for delegating and scaling the business. But yeah, first and foremost is gaining clarity as to what your process is in the first place and how you actually go and approach things.
Write the effing playbook is the book.
Yeah.
It's coming out
well, it's
soon.
It's a play on word, right? From because I'm an engineer, obviously, and we have a thing called RTFM. When people ask about, for example, how do you use this software or that software, you usually just say RTFM, which is read the fucking manual. And so, fine, I can read the fucking manual, but somebody needs to write it in the first place. And I think that applies to engineers, which is this expectation that, especially as you grow the business and the business become more successful, is like, well, how do you not know how to do X? Or why don't you do this the right way? It's like, well, like, have you written it down? Like, well, it was obvious when we're at like 5 or 10 or 20 people. It's like, well, you're not like at 5 or 10 or 20 people anymore. And so people can't just like guess it. But even when you're at like 5 or 10 people, you have to repeat things quite often for it to really just percolate, to for people to actually get it. And so writing it down really helps you better articulate what you think you know, and it helps you actually go and communicate with your team. So I would recommend everybody to go and write things down.
Very well said. And folks can catch up with you on X. We'll put your social credentials and links in the show notes at Built to Sell. Ronan, thanks for doing this.
All right. Thanks for having me.